Alright, let's get this thing live. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are live this morning. Massive apologies to anyone who's been waiting for the stream. We've had some serious tech issues this morning, which is nothing to do with Reaper. It's all to do with a half-baked plan that I had. Tutorial, a mix walkthrough, as it were. We're going to be using Reaper to mix the song Chelsea by Dragged Under. Thing is, we're going to do a little challenge by using nothing but the stock plugins in Reaper. Nothing but what's inbuilt, so it's all free. And because we're only going to use the stock Reaper plugins, we're not going to be using anything that doesn't work on Linux, Mac, Windows, anything. So this should all Yes, so the reason it's taken so long this morning is my original plan was to try and do this mix entirely on a Raspberry Pi, which I thought was a great idea. Tech issues are abundant this morning for some reason. But yes, so as I was saying, I was using Reaper on a Raspberry Pi, and it was just not coping before I even had a single plugin on because I had lots of routing going on. And yeah, I've just closed Voice Meter Banana. Hopefully that'll be the last of the tech issues. So that was using a capture card and everything, and that didn't quite work. So then I used a cheap laptop and a very old Hewlett-Packard laptop. So I was going to prove, you can do this on pretty much any old piece of hardware. And the power supply for that had died. It wouldn't even turn on. So then option 3 has been to go back to the mix that I did with all the plugins in and make a new file. And then it turns out the mix that I was doing of Africa a couple of days ago was all in 48 kilohertz. So I had the entire system set to 48k, and this mix was sent to us in 44.1k. And at the moment my system does not like me fighting between different setups, and it's trying to change, and every time it tries to go back to 48, it cuts out some of the software, or 44, it cuts some of the software. So I'm trying to run it as minimally as possible. And with Restream, I'll just turn off some of these master bus plugins. You should be able to hear this perfectly well. There we go. So this is the mix that I did last week with every nice shiny plugin on that I can possibly get. So I'm going to move forward a little, and I'm going to grab my coffee at this point because I've not even had my coffee this morning yet. It's been a real tech hell. But here we go. Let's Alt and click. Alt and click is how you quick delete plugins. So what I'm going to do, firstly, I'm going to mute all my effects channels, and then I'm going to delete all of them. I'm going to delete everything on everything. Oh, no, that can stay because that's Reaper's own EQ. It's good day, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to see everybody. If something's got Reaper's own EQ, I'm going to leave that on there, and then we're going to look at why that's on there and see if that's still relevant in our our Reaper only stock mix. Let's call this the stock mix. So Alt and click, we're getting rid of everything. That one needed to go, I could tell. Bit of intuition. Gone. Reaper's own gate can stay, but that's probably going to need tweaking. Let's save this as. Save project as. Chelsea mix. Stock plugins. There we go. I always end up doing that. I always end up hitting equals instead of minus because I'm using a German keyboard, but I'm English. So let's grab me a custard cream and listen to what we have. Cool. So let's just Control-Alt-P and use the performance meter to look for any heavy CPU using plugins. I don't think there are any now. I know it's kind of cheating, but I'm going to use SonarWorks on my output because it improves my monitoring situation because I am having to use headphones because of the situation we're in. You're not going to hear that, so to all intents and purposes, that's not going to affect the fact that for you guys, this is a stock plugins only mix still. So let's see what we have and start from the start. The reason that I've saved this as a new version is, if I just hide the mix window for a minute, I'm going to need to get rid of all this automation. So if I hit clear envelope on some of these, I can get rid of these automation pushes. And the reason I need to get rid of them is they're no longer relevant because I'm using different plugins. The automation that I'm going to end up with may be completely different. That's just a fade out that can stay. That's to do with sends being engaged and not being engaged. That can also stay. But you can see how the vocals gently pushed up and down in sections. I'm probably going to do this again when we get to it, and when we do get round to it, it'll probably look very similar, but it won't be the same because the way the compressions work or that kind of thing that we're using with the stock plugins may be subtly different, and we're going to use our ears to do that rather than just assume that everything we have is okay. Now, one thing that I am going to keep as well is the guitar solo sections. I reamped them through my real JCM 800 with a tube screamer in front, and they sound like this with no EQ. And that's pretty awesome, and that's going to save me a lot of time. So there's that, and as you'll see on a lot of these channels, I've dragged the top bar on these to make them all quieter than what we were sent. I did delete a few suspect audio items as well. Yes, I've done all my basic editing. You can see where there are sections where, like here, all the one shots cut out for silence. A lot of stuff just stops dead at the right places where it's just clean editing. That can be done with and without plugins at any point, using things like the trim silence command, which can save you a lot of time. I highly suggest that you go back, if you haven't already, and watch the full mix that we did with third-party plugins, because there are things that I do in there that I would always do. Need a way to replicate the lead sounds using amp plugins in JS. Well, in this case, I highly suggest that you look for free amp sims, because there are tons out there on multi-platforms just to do that, because the amps in inbuilt in Reaper, I'm going to be honest, they're not amazing. So that's something I'll be completely upfront about. But there are loads and loads of VST and that kind of thing, plugins that you can get that will work perfectly with Reaper on every platform. So that's something for another video. That's something for a separate day. So yeah, I'm going to just gloss over that bit, and I do apologise, but it's one of those things where having the real deal, even if it's any guitar amp or a multi-effects or anything, just do that externally. So let's look at the drums to begin with. This is what we did first on the last mix, and this is not going to be very loud. Yes, one of our people in chat says the free Lapoo Hybrid VST based on the JCM 800 is pretty great. Yes, it is. And you can get free impulse responses. You need a Linux plugin. All I can suggest there is go and have a look, because guitar amps are very complicated things indeed. The best Linux plugin you can get that sounds like a realistic guitar amp is a realistic guitar amp, and you can probably get one cheap or for free from a friend. Doesn't even have to be a good one if your mixing skills are up to scratch. Linux VST guitar amp. There we go. For Linux, guitarix.org is a virtual guitar that uses the jack audio connection kit. And yeah, so you can use the different plugin types to stick it straight into Reaper using Ladspur or LV2. And yeah, so like I was saying, there are options there, but I'm not on Linux, and today's focus is going to be the mix, but there's options, and there's an option. So I literally just googled Linux VST guitar sim. So yeah, apart from that little bit, that's our caveat for the day. Everything else, let's have a look. So let's start the drums with the overheads. Good morning, Liam. We can change. I haven't logged into Twitch in a long time. Let's have a look at Twitch. Dashboard. Manage stream. Edit stream info to be just chatting. Okay. Thank you for that. Right. So, moving on. There we go. That's an interesting thing from the chat. I mean, one of my regulars, Rage Prometheus, my crappy internal graphics won't play streams above 720p. Wow. So I downloaded the last live to rewatch in 1080. Hope you don't mind. I shouldn't say, yeah, it's great, it's fine, but if you're giving me the views and it's something you have to do, then okay. I can't officially endorse downloading videos off YouTube. Moving on, let's look at these drums, and let's start with the usual suspects, the overheads. This is what we did last time, but we're going to be working this backwards. You can see how I've grouped these two into a folder. This is the kind of thing where generally, if I was really trying to save on processing resources, I might render these out as a stereo file and do less of this kind of routing. But this is what saved me time, because I don't want to be processing something on the left and something on the right separately. I want to be processing them as a thing, an entire thing. The sun is very bright today, so if there are any bright spots in the corner, I do apologise. I'm trying to shield myself from the day star outside. There we go. And turn on the nice fake studio lights. There we go. So, overheads. They're not particularly loud in a lot of places. And that's fine. Let's have a look under the section for JS for compressors. Because there's a few nice compressors in here, if I just have a little dig. Fairly childish. That's what I want, the Fairchild stereo compressor limiter. What's on this EQ? Right, so the EQ's something we're going to need to keep, because that EQ, I must have gone through and listened for nasty frequencies and dipped them out. Yes, Major Prometheus, could always sub to the Patreon to help with support. Yes. So this JS plugin is something that comes with Reaper. This is a Fairchild, so this is a very mu valve compressor, but it's nice and free. So let's bring the threshold down. There we go. I can now hear it going, but I need to turn up the makeup gain to... There we go. So I turned the threshold down until I could hear it was doing something. I couldn't quite hear the snap on the snare there, so I changed the time constant, because a real Fairchild has 6 different time constants for attack and release. And then just turn the threshold down and turn the gain up, and then played with the bias until it sounded... Why did that sound really loud then? And then not? Is that to do with the... Let's just look for a big crashy section. Right, what we're going to do, let's just bypass this for a minute and bring up the volume of the overheads, because I did dip them down quite a lot. So let's just raise them back up. Unlike a lot of the, what do you call them? A lot of the tracks were way too loud when we got sent them, so I universally brought everything down. But let's listen to this. Oh, too much. There we go. So that is still bringing the level up a bit. There we go. Let's change it from left-right to lat-vert for the triggering mode. Lat-vert is what they mean by mid-side, and what that means is that there's not going to be any stereo pumping. Oh, let's find where that gang 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 frequency is on the EQ, because now I've scooped all the low end out. I can hear a definite low kind of wong 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 wong. There we go. Let's see what Stillwell plugins there are. No, the Stillwell plugins are not particularly well documented. It used to say who made them here. What do we have that's a niceness kind of thing? Is there anything in here? I've not been in here in a while. Oh, there's a 1073 EQ from Stillwell, which I might be using a little bit. In fact, I'll probably rely on this a lot. So, there we go. 160 hertz high pass. Oh, you beauty. So this is something I'm going to rely on a lot. The RBJ 1073 EQ is, as described, a 1073 equalizer, or at least roughly sounding like from Stillwell, that's included with Reaper, and it's really, really good. And I used to use the paid version of this, which is basically this with a nice interface, back in about 2012, before more premium plugins that had more of that analog saturation came in, and it's just got subtle sweeps. Now you can see I'm still using the Reaper EQ here that's got loads of these very specific notches in with overheads. I do find that cymbal wash can be quite aggressive on the ears, so I've really gone through there and dipped out particular honk kind of tones, but then the Neve style EQ afterwards is bringing it all back to a certain sweetness. Now, that's fantastic. So I've got some compression going on the overheads. Let's look at the room. So let's bring these up volume-wise a little bit. Right, so I probably... What's really loud? Ooh. Dynamic saturation, you say? Reloud dynamic saturation. From this to this. Oh, I don't know what that does, but I like it. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. And, oh, LP, so there's a low pass? So that's some sort of dynamic drive. Oh, I like that. What's a non-linear processor? What does that do? This is nice. So there's a non-linear processor. I don't really know what it does, but by turning up the saturation amount, I'm just going to turn both of these plugins off and on. It will sound louder and quieter, which isn't helping the comparison. You know what? There's an output volume slider. I'm going to try and roughly match them. I can definitely hear some saturation stuff going on there, and I like it. So let's get that 1073 EQ in there. Don't want anything below 50 Hz in the room. But that 110 Hz has always been the sweet spot on that Stillwell EQ. Nice. So I just swept through the options there, looking for a particular frequency in the mids that would just give me something nice. And you see how I'm boosting. The general wisdom is always cut with the EQs. Some people believe that. I think that's rubbish. You should only be cutting frequencies if you have a problem. Otherwise, you should be looking for something to sweeten, as long as you don't overdo it. There we go. Just by sweetening gently those cymbals there at the 7.2K mark, what that's done is that means that I don't need as much of that on the overhead. So let's try these together now. Whoa, yeah. There's a lot of harshness going on in the cymbals. There we go. At this point, I'm going to turn up my headphones and probably end up to... Oh, that's really loud, the room. Cool. Time to start throwing in some kick. So, pit, 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 pit. So these can probably come up a little bit from where they were. So I've got that as my in. Oh. Out doesn't need to go up anymore. So let's bring up overheads and room again. So this is where I get a bit weird. I probably want more low end on this punchy kick and probably less low end on the woofy outside kick because the they have different time domain properties. So the click 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 click, I want a bit more low end on that, so it just goes ba 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 but I want a bit less low end on the one that's got all the low end already, which is the bois 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 bois, which goes on for longer. So that will transform the mix from having bois 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 to a more defined ba 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 ba, just by having more thump on the thing that's quick and less thump on the thing that's slow. That will naturally, without me having to use any gates or anything, make it feel quicker. Man, Monday morning, everything's going absolutely bananas. So, seems that Dragged Under liked the stream, so that's good. Hey! Definitely don't need any compression on this anyway. Can put a 50 Hz filter on this. There we go. And now to find where to boost the middle, because it's all click, 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 and I want some mids. There we go. So, soloed, that's gone from flat to fat. It's got a bit of that beach ball thing going on, which isn't my favourite, but in mix context, it sounds right, and that's what's important. So this kick out sounds like a beach ball. So we're going to use another 1073. This is going to be all over it. So I'm going to take everything below 50 Hz out of this for a start. Ooh. Yeah, so that was lots of under 50 Hz. Don't really want that. But let's go with the 110. And probably end up just backing this down a bit. So without the out kick, and with, out, in. So we can probably turn that down a bit. There we go. So you don't need sub stuff in a kick drum, really. Cool. At this point, we might start to see a little bit of over on the master bus. So I'm going to bring in Event Horizon limiter clipper just before restream here. With a ceiling, let's say -1. And yeah, -1. And that should be with no threshold. So if anything's over, it will naturally limit it down. And because it's digital over and floating point, it's not going to be clipping already. But this will prevent it from going out clipping. It's quite a nice little limiter that's inbuilt, that's in the JS section. Okay. So, you want to see me playing drums with a kick swapped out for a beach ball? So what, a late 90s drum mix? There are plenty of mixes from the late 90s where it just sounds like someone strapped a dodgeball in place of a kick drum and is just hitting it with a rubber beater, so it goes boing, boing, boing. Right, so here's where some drums come in. So here's one thing that I was doing that the one-shots that we've been given pretty much do for us, which is, if you listen to the snare, really gated it, so without the gate, loads of overtones. We don't really want those overtones, so I've just gated it really aggressively. Because a lot of those overtones will come through either on the room or on the one shot where we've got that big reverby thing going on. So ooh. Right, so it looks like I've just cranked the volume on these, so I'm going to bring them back down, and I'll just push the volume on the gate side, which isn't what you're supposed to do really, but I know for a fact that I've turned down all the volumes going into the gate. So rather than mess around with the threshold, I'll just do it that way today. So that snare sounds okay, but doesn't sound like anything special. So I'm going to put those in their own little group, and I'm just going to give these a little bit more body and a bit more snap. I'm going to do the snap. There was a peak limiter called the NP1136. There we go. And what I want... Oh. Aha, there we go. Don't know what happened there, guys, but we had a bit of a dropout, but we're back. There we go. Stream has carried on. It was a reconnection issue. There we go. We are back. So, as I was saying, hopefully... There we go. Yes, I know we're live because we're still live. There we go. So, let's have a look. Hopefully that's just a one-off. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're seeing this, this is part 2. There we go. That's really, really annoying when stuff like that happens. I don't know what happened there, but my entire stream dropped, and then OBS just picked it back up. So I don't know if my internet went off for a split second, or if Restream had a fit, or what. I do not know. So as we were saying, and this is going to be, yeah, if anybody sees the first half of the stream, I'm going to have to link them together now and YouTube. That's really annoying when that happens. So this peak limiter on the snare is just going to take the top off it in 4-to-1 mode. And then I'm going to bring the gain up to match. So without, with, it needs a bit more EQ, a bit more gain even. Without and with, there we go. With, I can just hear, oh, to make up gain down a bit. There we go. With a bit of a slower attack, we get much more snap on that snare. And then I'm going to use another of these 1073 EQs, which I just copied across onto the snare channel. So that can have an 80 Hz filter. There it is. More 220. A lot more high frequency. Those mids don't need anything, so that's great. Let's just try that in context of the kit. That sounds really quite nice so far. I mean, the snare's not really jumping out at me, and that low tom needs a bit of something to get that to... that'd be why. The volume on was really quite low, and I'll include tom 1 in the volume boost here. All that really needs is one of these Neve EQs to really enrich parts. And is it 3K that I want that click on the tom? Yeah, not that much. There we go. So it's all about EQing on that tom. And then right near the end, there's tom 1 comes in a couple of times. So I'm just going to copy that over and see if that does the job on our left tom. Perfect. And yeah, like I say, the snare's not got that air or anything on it yet, but there are these one shots to go in. So let's just add in these 2 one shots on the kick. Okay, so that extra boomy overhead kick, that extra boomy kick is just giving us some space. So they can come in. Let's just add in the snappy snare one shot. Right, so the snappy snare one shot's not doing much right now. That needs to come up in volume. Oh, too much. And the big snare room. That's got some real stuffy mids on that one shot, but that can all come up in volume as well. Oh yes, now let's just add that in. Yes. Let's add some more low end to this snare. And more high end to suit. Those drums sound absolutely massive, and they have absolutely no processing apart from stock plugins. Let's see how our performance meter is doing. Hilariously low amounts of processor usage on this whole thing, and it sounds huge. So what I tend to go for with paid plugins is real, like, top 5% cherry on the cake sweetening. And can all be done without any sort of prettiness. Now the bass, this is going to be fun. So let's just listen to the bass. So let's bring the volume up on these a little. And then just look at how I had this done. So I had 2 channels going on the bass. I had a kind of a cleaner, thicker, more saturated version, and I also had another version. So I'm going to start kind of backwards. I'm going to use reverb on the what I call the bass DI channel as my clean tone. So I'm going to add in a file, and I'm going to add in an IR file here. What have I got? I'm going to add in, I have a lot of the Celestion impulse responses, a pulse 12, 44.1k, long as you've got, with an AKG D112 balanced. So this it'll be quite loud. There we go. So that's emulating a bass cabinet. So it's as if I've put a clean bass through. So this is without, and this is with. Awesome. So this is going to be my clean tone. By the way, this is my clean tone. And this is where it gets interesting, because this is where reverb's going to come in. And so this is where I look at my effects group. Do I have, yeah, so my bass group is going to what's called the small room, and the small room currently has nothing on it. So the small room is going to have another reverb on there. Where can you find the IRs? Oh, that's a good point. That IR you cannot find. You will have to go to celestianplus.com and buy that one, unfortunately. But you can use free ones from Ownhammer. Just search the internet. There are hundreds, thousands of free impulse responses for bass cabs, guitar cabs. That are very, very similar. I just happened to look for one that I already had. But the impulse response loader is free and is in repo, and it's more kind of the point here. So I'm going to use reverb again on the small room, and making sure I don't use the dry signal. I'm going to add a file from Bricasti M7, and I can't remember the website, but these were all donationware. So Studio B Close of a Bricasti M7 stereo. There we go. And I'm going to add a filter in there afterwards to get rid of stuff below, let's say 120-ish hertz. There we go. So that's now loaded up. So let's go back to our bass. Bit too much room there. So let's get a compressor going on this. Let's just use the good old stock recomp. I just want to bring that down at maybe 2 or something to 1. There we go. So that's just nailing that down to just be a more consistent tone. Hello. Right, okay. Hello everybody appearing in chat. So that's our bass clean tone. I'm not going to EQ it because I'm going to add in something completely different. This is where this is going to get experimental. So this is our bass grind, I've called this. Let's see what distortions we have. There's a JS called distortion. Ooh. Let's just. That's pretty brutal sounding. What I probably want is an EQ before that. Because that's how distortion boxes tend to work in the real world, is they pre-shape their distortion before blending it back in. There we go, just a basic distortion with a low pass and a cut. Sounds very dark glassy to me. And then another EQ afterwards, now that we've shaped the distortion, just to tame it. There we go, so using 2 EQs and the distortion plugin there, we've made pretty much what I would call a relatively convincing dark glassy kind of tone. So now that probably needs more top end in it, so I'm going to bring the dry back in. And use an EQ on the clean tone as well to get a bit of clean zing going. There we go. So let's bring this 1073 Neve style EQ in on the overall. Chelsea, hey Chelsea. Awesome. Let's see if there's a stereo izer. I'm sure there's been a couple of stereoizers I've used before. Is it stereo field manipulator? There's one of these. One of these can kind of stereoize, but with a what's the word? Because I like the MDA stereo, but it messes up the low end. There's one of these stereoizer type things. Stereo enhancer. Maybe, yeah. I'll just leave it as mono, because you can hear that the small room that I've used, the room reverb, is just giving the bass a little bit of stereo information, because I don't generally like the bass to be entirely mono down the middle. I do like it to have some sort of stereo life to it. There we go. Just because, you know, lively is interesting. So, onto the guitars, and then we'll probably come back to this. But yeah, let's start with the rhythm guitar, which I remember being very harsh. So this is going to that small room too much by the sound of it. So I can take the low end out of this straight away. Can I show the processing on the toms? Sure. So the toms have got nothing except for some EQ. So the EQ on the toms, let's just, it's the 1073 EQ, and it's just cutting super lows, boosting a lot of low end, a lot high end, and I found a thing at 3K. And that's it. So that goes without processing, with. Again, none of this is final until we get to having something on everything. So that's sounding pretty decent. So let's get back to these rhythm guitars. Where are you? So I'm going to put a high pass on this, a low pass even. Let's try that reloud thing again. Seems to be a frequency gone, especially on the right. So let's just listen to this in context and make sure everything else is off. So solo group off. Keys, they don't exist. Vocals off. Gang vocals. And then let's listen to it in context. Right. This just needs lots of nice EQing to make it sound nice. So I'm going to take this, so that most of what the inbuilt Reaper EQ is doing is top end filtering and searching for specific nasty frequencies. Beyond that, I just want to sweeten it. And what I've actually ended up doing there is taking out some low mids, but with that very broad Neve style EQ. Right, so this lead guitar is very dark, so this is going to need some real sweetening. We're going to start off just listening to this in solo just for a minute. Sorry, rip headphone users. So that, yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a 17 dB boost on the top end. But the way that an EVQ works, that's beyond the top end of the guitar, so that's gently just lifting that 6-7K region without adding any resonance peaks. It's kind of a clever little trick. If you know you've got no frequency information above a certain point, you can put an EQ too high, and instead of an EQ having that kind of bell curve thing, suddenly the bell curve is so far up that it's actually just using one side of the bell curve to very gently lift. So that's how it was. That's how it is now. Let's see how that sounds with the other one. Come on. Needs a little bit more EQ work, but that can be done from just a good old regular Reaper EQ. So there we go. See how this sounds. Cuts almost too well. That doesn't need to be so loud. This is why I took a lot of the volume automation away. Right, so there we get to our filter guitars, which I'm just going to start by copying over the EQ from the lead. So that's our, we don't need any low frequency on them at all. Too much high frequency boost. Hey Chelsea. Right, so that can just come up volume wise. How do I get a clean recording like that? I mean, just step by step by step. Find the EQ points that you don't want and just don't push anything too hard. Find frequencies using your hearing that you go, that doesn't need to be there. I don't like this. I don't like that. How do you get a clean recording? I mean, none of these are clean recordings. I mean, if you listen to like, these are the rhythm guitars with no EQs. And that's with just bringing out frequencies I want, getting rid of frequencies I don't want. What Reaper skin? That's the default Reaper 6 skin. That is. There's nothing custom about this. This is entirely. I've colorized some channels so that I can see what's what, but that's not a skin thing. That's just organization. You can just right click on any channel, go to track color, and then just set a track to, including all its audio, to any custom color you like. I tend to use random colors because it's quicker, but yeah, if I just hide the mixer for a minute, yeah, it's something that if I probably should have done this a while back, but if I've been adding more and more and more tracks, so if I set these to a custom color, there we go. I can now set the folders that everything's in to match, so that I can actually see on the mix window a bit better what's what. So if I set, this is going to confuse some people because suddenly everything's going to be the wrong color, and I apologize. But oh, the feedback guitars, they need to go in. Set track to color. Does every instrument have a BD range it needs to be in? BD range? Do you mean dB? As in like decibel volume range? Because the short answer is no, not really. It all depends on what you hear and what you want to hear, and that's always mix dependent. I like to have things, especially drums, I try and keep them well below 0 dB, which what ends up happening is they end up adding together to just about touch, because you can see I don't want this to be hitting 0, but when everything's said and done, I'm getting 1 dB over, which is annoying. But if I put Event Horizon on here, which is a clipper, there we go. That's now catching anything that goes over and just clipping the top off, which is fine by me. There we go. Mastering live stream. I've already done a very in-depth mastering video using Ozone, and I highly recommend you check that out because I talk a lot about the philosophy of mastering as much as actually using Ozone. You can translate what I do there to any stock plugins. But mastering as an art form, I highly recommend, especially for modern work, pay for a decent limiter. Whether it's Slate FGX, whether it's Kazrog's K-Clip, whether it's Ozone's Maximizer. I think the kick's overpowering the bass. Well, we're not finished, so don't worry about any of that stuff. And it's one of those things where, especially the way that these mixes are going to go, the kick has to be louder because when we get to clipping and compression and that kind of thing at the end, any transient information, that is to say kicks that go bum, 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 will gently be reduced in comparison to anything that's not. So at that point, suddenly it will feel like the bass has got louder. At that point, it will suddenly feel like the guitars have got louder, the vocals have got louder, because anything that currently goes out of the mix, we're going to be chopping the tops of those off. And I mix knowing that, so don't worry about that. Right, so let's get these feedback guitars in. they don't need anything really. They've got an EQ that takes the super low end out, brightens them up a bit. I might just take that right hand feedback down a touch so it doesn't interfere too much with the main vocal. Cool, and this crunch guitar. That's got a lot of low-end information in that we don't want. Cool. What headphones do I use? I use Sennheiser HD 650s. They are the most appropriate mixing headphones I think I've ever used. Best is a bad term, but I'm used to these, and in fact I've had this pair for about 7 or 8 years. They've flown around the world with me. They have done several trips around the world. I know this pair inside and out. Reverb can generate test tones and create IRs. It can indeed. Your favourite demo cab sims? I wouldn't. That's property theft. But you do you. I can hear my daughter going, Daddy, in the next room. It's very cute, but I'm trying to work. So let's bring these solo guitars in. Oh, volume, sorry. So aside from our small room reverb, let's add a delay in here, because I don't actually have one right now. So let's use a JS delay. What do we have? Delay... floaty delay? Might be nice. Delay with tempo ping pong. So ping pong with 100%. So it's already set to a quarter note, that's nice. Mix in no dry. There we go, and I'll be adding an EQ after that. Where are you? EQ. And so that EQ afterwards, oh, that'll do, that's the Neve EQ. So I'm gonna take a load of high pass filtering and a load of 12K cut. And then just add a subtle mid-frequency bump, because that's the way that a lot of vintage delays sound. They have a certain kind of saturation to them. So let's just try this delay group with that now. There we go, yeah. That's sounding very, very nice indeed. How long would it take to learn mastering to an okay standard? Can't answer that question, because that could be a week or that could be 10 years. Am I using anything to identify the tempo? In this case, the song was sent to us with a BPM reference of 155. If if you don't get sent a BPM reference, you can separately load up a track, and then where it says BPM and tap here, you can actually hover over that and just bang, 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 bang on the mouse in time with the song, and it'll give you a BPM there. That can cause issues if you've got the project set to the wrong settings with project settings, where that can, time in beats and bars and that kind of thing. If that's set wrong, that can then squash the track up and down, which you then have to try and undo. But yeah, there we go. How many mics we use for the drums was an old question. I don't think they're real drums, but we've got kick, in, out, snare, top, bottom, to snare 1 and 2, tom 1 and 2, 2 overheads, 2 rooms. So that's 10. So that's, 10 mics, and then the one-shots, we've got one-shot samples. We've been given 4, 2 for the kick, 2 for the snare. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all you need. Where else is this delay getting? There we go. Hello, everyone. What's the work? Oh, Restream. Restream, don't worry about Restream. Restream is sending the audio out to my streaming software, to OBS. So that's literally just there. Whenever I press play, that gets sent over to OBS over here. And I did a video on that last week. If you want to learn more about that, that's now available. So these guitars, let's go back to these. These went through a JCM 800, sound very nice. I'm going to use this 1073 EQ to just take low end out and push these in the 1K-ish region. Sounds like a radio effect, so I'm going to push the high end to compensate. And then, there we go. Oh, good question. As an analogy, if the stems are the ingredients and the mixing is the cooking, what proportion of time is getting the ingredients ready opposed to cooking? It's another unanswerable question, but I can give you some insight. It depends how well the tracks were presented to you, whether they were in order, whether they've been properly edited so the silences are right, properly named, gain stage is right, and does it sound terrible? You know, there are a number of factors, but I generally don't consider all that stuff to be mixing. I consider that to be, I think I used the term pre-mixing before. It's how to describe it. Generally, if you were a multi-million-dollar Grammy-winning mix engineer, you would have a mix assistant whose job it was to take all the files from a client, clean them up, get them in the right order, trim them, make sure the volumes are roughly right, all that kind of stuff. So the way that I tend to work, if I've tracked a project, it's generally exactly how I would want it when I get to the mix section. But if I haven't tracked it, then it's usually an hour or two, can be a bit longer, going through and almost mindlessly, not being creative, but just drums in a folder, silences trimmed, bass in a folder, guitars in a folder, rhythm guitars separate from lead guitars, lead vocal separate from group vocal. That way, when that's done, I stop, I go and have a coffee, I clear my head, and then as an entirely different person, I can then come back, press play, and go, right, how does this sound? What do I need to change? And that's what a lot of people miss. I think they get too bogged down in doing mix assistant work when they should be mixing. So try and get all your edits clean and try and get all your work ready to make it easy for you. Like in the last hour and a half-ish, we've flown through, and I'm halfway through the guitar solo, and then we're onto the vocals, and then we're onto the group of gang vocals. And there's no way I could have done it from there if I hadn't already a couple of days ago gone through and done things like cleaning up edits and making sure everything was super clean. So, on with the show. Sounds nice, but there's a bit of a radio effect going on now, so if I... So, a few questions coming in. What's the right order of stems? That entirely depends on what works for you. For me, I tend to go with a fairly standard sort of drums, bass, rhythm guitars, acoustic guitars, then lead guitars, then keyboards, then main vocals, then backing vocals, then extra stuff, then effects. That order, because I've used that order for so long, means that if I hear something that needs changing, I can go very quickly to where that problem is, just because my ordering of tracks is the way I've always done it, so I can very quickly just zoom in. And a EQ cuts best for fix and boost best for enhance. That generally nails it, yeah. So the way that I've always worked with stuff is listen to a track and go, is there a problem I can hear? If there's a problem I can hear, I need to get rid of it, so cut it. And then if it sounds right but isn't nice, quote unquote, and that's a very creative thing, then I do start to boost little bits here, little bits there, and generally much broader with a lift, an EQ lift. Like I might, on an EQ that I'm fixing, be very specific. I might not be specific, but let's have a look at, say, that's a less specific fix. The rhythm guitars, yeah, some very specific fixes there of frequencies that weren't very nice. And then that 1073 EQ is what I'm using a lot, and you'll see it's going up a lot, especially the high frequency, which is a very gentle, very broad lift. So... definitely hear something not right. Okay. So it's about cleaning a project, trimming silence before you start mixing. How do I go about it? There are a few ways of doing it. Look at your waveforms, look where there's supposed to be silence, listen to it. So, next section. Do I have monitor speakers to check my mixes as well? Usually, yes. Today, no. We are all locked down in quarantine. I'm at home. As you can see from the very makeshift setup behind me, this is my little office. This is where I tend to do my weekly podcast. They're on the walls just to stop a bit of reflection in the vocal mic while we do the podcasts. Usually, if you've seen any of our other videos, I have a nice big recording studio where I have a lovely set of Adam A7Xs and stereo subwoofers. I have a set of NS10s. I do tend to work on monitors wherever possible. But in a lot of situations, that's just not doable, which is why I've got very good at mixing on headphones, because quite often, especially working in film sound, which is something that I used to do quite a lot, you're not necessarily in a studio, you are wherever you have to be. You might quite often be doing revisions for sound on a train, or on the way to the next meeting, or just anywhere. You might be in a hotel room, So yeah, I've had to get good at mixing on headphones. And also, do I have another setup for mastering? No. I wish I could afford a quote-unquote proper mastering setup, but it's just... Mastering is an art form. You don't need really, 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 really nice monitors. As nice as they are and as wonderful an experience as that is, it's entirely possible to do it using the old car test, checking mixes on a phone, that kind of thing, which isn't particularly glamorous, but you do what you have to do to get the job done. So let's move on. Let's skip this keys channel because that's something I made in the previous stream, and let's start looking at the vocal because this is where it gets interesting.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to...
So let's just look at vocal 1 for a minute.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
So firstly, that's going to a vocal plate which currently doesn't exist. So I'm going to copy over reverb to that vocal plate channel, and I'm going to change it from the Bricasti Studio B.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
To what was it? The vocal plate.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes.
Right, so that's going to need some EQ work after that. It sounds nice. It's a nice vocal plate, but it needs cleaning up. So it needs no low end, and it needs low mid. I can hear a lot of build up.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate.
And I'd like to hear a bit more high end on this plate.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
And that's before I even mix the vocals. So let's go back to the vocal.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
So that's got too much reverb on it, that's fine.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
And let's not use that yet. Let's start with... let's smash it with a compressor. Was it the 1175 compressor, which is kind of 1176-ish.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, hands cover my face, I feel so out of place.
There we go. Have fun with the automation on those vocals. Didn't do much automation actually on my main mix. If you didn't see that last week, I've already done a mix of this using general third-party plugins, and I didn't have very much automation. I had a lot of compression going on, but that's my thing.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
Ooh.
Refuse to speak with me. There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
Is mixing solely about your personal taste or how you like to hear it? Those are the same thing. And so the answer is yes. Mixing is entirely about personal taste. Just like anything in life. But you do need to be able to do things to a certain level before you really can put your personal twist on things and still have it come out sounding quote unquote professional. That's a tricky thing. I've learnt over the years. Oh.
You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break.
That's not working very nicely, so let's try a different compressor. It's just kind of fuzzing. Let's try recomp. Yeah, I know that I tend to like a mix that's a little bit mid-forward. I like to have every separate element quite well saturated before they come together. You know, there are certain things that I like to hear in a mix that other people don't. Like, but then there are also some great mixers on this planet who I really, really like their work, but I don't want to sound like what they do. A really great example is Nolly from Periphery, Nolly Get Good. I think his mixes are amazing. They are very clear. Usually the snare is right in your face, that kind of thing. The guitars all sit perfectly. I don't want to sound like that. There we go. So, Rick Rubin, his mixes are very, very mid-forward and very, very crushed. I like that, and it's too much for me. I'm generally somewhere in between. I like saturation, I like mid-forwardness, I don't like that much.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back there.
Oh, auto-tune, not automation. Yeah, there's a... No, I don't do any auto-tune or Melodyne or anything on these vocals. If you listen closely to them, they've already been done. They've already been processed tuning-wise to the nth degree. So I'm not going to go ahead and change anything. Doesn't need it.
Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace.
There we go. I'm just steamrolling these at 3-1. Fast release, very fast attack. Basically like an 1176, just steamrolling it.
Refuse to speak with me, can't look. There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
And from here, I'm going to get another one of those Neve Q things, the 1073.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
Just mute the other one for a minute.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hate shall say, I'm not always gonna be.
Are those two just... Yeah.
When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still.
Those two should probably be in the harmony group as well.
When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face.
Right, so this vocal's not cutting through, so I want a bit of a 1K-ish boost. Gentle, not a lot.
When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hate shall say. There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hate shall say, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hate shall say. There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
Cool, so just for a minute...
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
That's a
You give
chorus
your
two
heart to me.
vocal.
Escaping.
Right, so I'm going to copy all of this over to those extra vocals and see if that works. Right, so that's our main, and where was, yeah, there we go. I decided when I was doing the other mix that the I'll Let You Down there should be fairly well panned, because usually on my second vocal, because this has a second vocal, I do tend to have, and this is where
repeating my mistakes.
this is where I'll just copy all these over. There's an extra plugin called MDA Pseudo Stereo. And MDA Pseudo Stereo
And repeating my mistakes.
does this big...
You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
That first part of that vocal there was pretty broken and messed up.
Break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed.
And I'm going to go back to that EQ on the second vocal and definitely take all the low end out of it.
Won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy.
And then blend that under the main vocal. So I've taken away some attention from the second vocal.
Won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, that's cover my face. I feel so out of place, but you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all.
Ooh, good question. When I do a mix after having already done the song, am I trying to reproduce the other mix, or am I just going from scratch? Well, that's a hard question. I am going from scratch. I'm probably going to end up in a similar place as the other mix because I'm mixing to end up with what I want to hear in my head, which is probably going to be very similar to how it was the first time.
Won't break, anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes.
Right, so let's start using this same setup across the board and see how that gets us.
In my eyes, can't look in my eyes.
Ooh, less please.
Can't look in my eyes. Can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, that's cover with me. Can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, that's
Right, so that needs a good low mid push
with me. Can't look in my eyes.
and less high end
With me, can't look in my eyes. When you with me, can't look in my eyes.
and less vocals in general.
With me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, that's cover my face. I feel so out of place, but you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace.
And we will do a de-esser soon.
Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea. Here I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long. All the hurt I've ever caused, you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea.
Okay, so the whoa just needs some mud taken out. And that just needs loads of delay. Is there any reason to upsample before starting a mix? No, none whatsoever. Zero. You will, by resampling, you are essentially degrading the quality of the audio you were sent. The only possible reason that you would do that is if all the plugins that you have a much better time with aliasing in the top end if you're running at, say, 96 kilohertz, which most plugins now have inbuilt oversampling so that they don't need that. So you are generally better off not upsampling everything before you start. You're better off just working at the sample rate you were given. So. Right, so these need to be brought up a bit. Let's just use Reaper's compressor. Auto makeup. Fairly harsh. And that's okay, so let's just use a Reaper EQ to get rid of that mud. There it is, lots of build up.
Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me, whether I rise or fall,
Should you always try and record at the highest sample rate possible? No. You should try and record at the sample rate that you're going to be mixing, or more importantly, delivering at. If you try and record at 96k, find that you're struggling with processor usage, you're struggling with all sorts of stuff, and then you send it to someone and the output was supposed to be at 44 or 48k anyway, then you've lost the game, essentially, because then it's got to be downsampled. Any possible benefit that you might have seen is going to be lost. It's one of those things where you may as well have not bothered.
I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me, whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea,
That's still got a bit of an upper mid honk in there.
I'm not always gonna be
There it is.
I'm not always gonna be all that you I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me.
Oh, hello Anna. Do I always get rid of mud in any instruments in a mix? Generally, yeah. It very much depends, but generally yes. If I was doing like a jazz an ensemble and the double bass is going dum ba dum 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 ba dum bum bum, a lot of that energy might be in that 500 hertz region, and that might fit that mix particularly well. Generally, in a rock mix, in a metal mix, that frequency range has a lot going on, and a lot of it needs to not be there, or at least be there less. Because that's the thing, like, distorted guitars have a lot of information in that 500 hertz region. Vocals have a lot of information there. A lot of the close mics on drums have a lot of information there. The bass has a lot of information there. You add them all together and you get this very mix that has no clarity to it, because that little bit times 10 or times 20 adds up a lot. So if I just take a little bit out of each, that multiplies to suddenly become a much flatter balance on a mix. Ooh. Volume. back to our vocals, we're going to add a de-esser on the whole group of vocals.
I'm not always gonna be.
And this is where re-x comp comes in. If I can get... Yeah, there we go. Re-x comp. There is a preset here, male DS.
I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. I'm not always gonna be. I'm not always gonna be. I'm not always gonna be. I'm not always gonna be
there it is.
all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea.
The thing with a de-esser is you don't want too much of it. You just want to take off enough of that high frequency, which in our case is really quite high because of all the high frequency lift from that Neve EQ. You want to take off enough that it's not offensive and painful, but you don't want to take out too much that it ends up as, hey Chelsea. I heard a mix that somebody had put in of this song. I don't remember the name and I'm not going to find it. But the de-essing was so strong and so bad that it was with my mistakes. It really sounded like the singer Tony had a really bad lisp, which because of a complete lack of top end.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
Like that. That sounds like Mike Tyson on Mistakes.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
So what I want to do is make sure the threshold of that is high enough that it doesn't do that.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
There we go. And just clips a little bit off the tops.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart.
So without it, it should go tss and be quite painful.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
And with...
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You
just clips the top off there.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Has covered my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea.
So that's got too much vocal play on because I could really hear it then.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Has covered my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me.
There's still something going on in that whoa that's just a build up.
Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect. Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea. Hey Chelsea. Hey Chelsea. Hey Chelsea.
Yeah, there's too much low end going on in that small room. There we go.
Hey Chelsea. Hey Chelsea.
Does the de-esser need any makeup gain? No, because we're taking away, we're not adding. If I was to end up with makeup gain, then everything in that region would be louder all the time. That's an EQ. We don't want an EQ here. We just want it to just dip and not do anything else.
Hey Chelsea. Hey Chelsea. myself. Sometimes I lose my temper.
Right, so I can do things like that. Sometimes I lose my temper. I can just automate a little push on that.
Hey, Chelsea.
And that's put me on the wrong vocal section. That's really annoying when that happens.
Sometimes I lose.
There we go.
Sometimes I lose my temper. Hey, Chelsea. This long, all the hurt I've ever caused, you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper.
So that's too much of a vocal push. 1 dB down on the verse, because there's...
Here I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long. All the hurt I've ever caused, you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper. Hey, Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether or rise, you'll be with me through it all. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea. The less you hope from me, the less I'll let you down. Escaping great expectations. The more I promise you, the more I let you down. I can't meet great expectations. No. Hey, Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea.
Oh. Hey, Chelsea. That needs to be louder. That can be exactly as it was supposed to be. Guitars need a little something something.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes.
Why does it sound kind of mastered already? That's how a mix should be. A good mastering session involves nothing. Take some time to listen to The Mastering Show. It's a podcast by a guy called Ian Shepherd, who's one of the foremost mastering engineers in the world. And pretty much the first thing he says in the first episode is the best masters are the ones where it's sent to him and he doesn't have to do anything. So you should be mixing with the aim of not fixing anything in mastering. Every group, every channel should be properly EQ'd and compressed so it all fits. Reverbs and delays shouldn't have too much going on in the low end that's messing everything up. Let's just try this reloud on the guitars and see how it works.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey, Chelsea. I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea. Here I am again, I always get it wrong. There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me out of place, but you're still by my. Hey, Chelsea.
Right, Right, so this is where things like a little bit of automation comes in. I want the vocals to be a little less loud in the verses so that when everything kicks in the chorus, they're sat on everything and not getting lost.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all.
Yeah, I want more harmony, I think, on those sections.
You expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all.
And yeah, Vox 1 clipping, I don't really care. It's fine. If it's going over by half a dB or so, keep in mind that everything that's done in Reaper is floating point, and what that means is it goes through to the next channel and it's not just got its head chopped off. All the information over actually goes into the next plugin. So like re-xcomp, which is doing the de-essing, will know that and it won't clip. And then re-loud, which I'm using, is like a saturating plugin. And then that's all going into the event horizon limiter on the master bus. So nothing is actually clipping. It's just reading as a 0 and kind of warning you, which, yeah, you shouldn't do that, but you can. You can get away with it. If you're not sending out file stems when you're done of everything that's mixed, in which case you will get a bit of an issue there, then you can be absolutely fine with stuff like that.
There I go again, repeating my mistakes. You give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize, hands cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea. Here I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long. All the hurt I've ever caused, you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea. The less you hope from me, the less I'll let you down. Escaping great expectations. The more I promise you, the more I let you down. I can't meet great expectations. No.
2, 3, 4.
Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall. Hey Chelsea.
Right, so the harmonies, are they going out to,
Hey Chelsea.
yeah, they're going to everywhere. I'm not going to bother automating all them, turning it on and off, but I could. So the one thing that I really want to add at the end here is, just for the heck of it, I did make kind of a nice kind of synth thing to go underneath. I'm going to do this using Reaper's own plugins as well, because why not? Just for the heck of it. So I'm going to use resynth to start off with, which is going to sound terrible, but bear with me. So this is resynth. Oh. Sounds like a pipe organ. That sounds hilarious, but it's a start. And here's the thing. So from here, I'm going to bring that up by an octave by going into properties, pitch adjust semitones 12. That's going to have a ton of delay on it. Yeah, I'm going to distort this. Distortion fuzz, you say? This is, yeah. Wet mix less. Channel mode stereo. Extra sign. No, that doesn't sound very nice. But what I can do, first of all, let's get the MDA pseudo stereo on there. We've got an amp of some kind. Yeah, there is a convolution amp modeler. Let's try that. Again, volume down. Marshall. No, let's leave it on the Dumble Overdrive Special. And output less. Oh, so let's do that. Let's add loads of delay, but there was one called floaty, so I'm going to use that. Let's tempo sync this to quarter notes and see if that. Yeah, so I want 8, 4, 8. Right, this is where I'm going to... is there an arpeggiator? MIDI arpeggiator, so I'm going to put the MIDI arpeggiator before resynth, just because. So I want this to be 4 times a BPM. There we go. There we go. And then change the attack and release on it a bit. So out of nowhere, I've made my own synthesizer that can just sit underneath nicely. Come on. Oh, reconnecting. Okay. It would seem... There we go. Are we back? Yeah. It would seem that my connection's being a bit funny today. That's the third dropout. But yeah, so now we've got this synth that I've made. Does have a really annoying kind of honk in the middle of it. Okay, that's fun. There's a bit at the end I'd forgotten about. Okay, so it looks like I'm finishing this mix to a grand total of about 3 people because the stream dropped, which is intensely annoying. Even though enable auto stop was not enabled on the yeah, so okay. There's a few people tuning in now, which is I'll have to investigate because that's really quite annoying that it's done that. But anyway, that could be just hardware. It could be because everybody in every home in this entire area is watching Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever at this time and is overloading the local boxes. Let's listen.
Give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, happiness not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone staring back that you don't recognize. Has covered my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, you can't help but remember, but I can't help myself. Stop
Okay. Well, we're doing really well with viewers then. But it's something that happens. I think it's time for me to call this one anyway, because this, I could improve on this for days and days and days. I used a louderizer plugin, which I wondered what it did, but it looks like it literally just adds a half of the signal and maybe like a quarterized version of the signal. It's a very, very simple plugin. But using that before the event horizon just makes everything feel a little bit louder. That's Fluffspan? Yes, it is. If I was to send it for mastering, what would we need to do also? That depends on the opinion of the mastering engineer. If I was to do that, I would have to take off my limiter, louderizer, anything on the master bus. Let's see what we get from Well, that's the thing about mastering. If it was one song being sent off for mastering, that's dead easy. They literally just listen to a couple of references that are like what you might like. And then they just compare that to, compare references to your track. Maybe do a couple of EQ moves, bit of compression to make it match as little as possible. And then they send it. When it's an album, they've got to make sure every song matches. Listen to a few mixes and most of them fail during the intro, then the bass sound processing makes me ill. What do people do to the vocal? They try too hard quite a lot of the time. People aren't listening closely to these stems that we've been sent. If I listen to one of these vocals, for instance, with no processing on, I'll just bypass it all for a minute and just listen to vocal 1 with no processing.
I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long. All the hurt I've ever caused you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper!
That has been tracked through some sort of vintage preamp. I can hear the saturation. It's been compressed on the way in. I think it's an 1176. It's got a surprising amount of low end for a raw vocal. It's been tuned. People are putting all that processing on this, thinking they need to when they've not listened to it and gone, oh, it's already got that. I don't need to do that twice. And yeah, they're just not listening for like, oh, this has got too much low end. How do I clear this up, etc., etc., etc. So
I am again, I always get it wrong.
That I just heard too much low end, too much low mid. Get rid. Needed compressing a little with a kind of a medium, slow, fast compressor. Medium time.
I am again, I always get it wrong.
And then needed a lot of a high end lift for the style that I like.
I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long. All the hurt I've ever caused you can't help but remember. But I can't help myself. Sometimes I lose my temper. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. When the horizon fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, unless you hope from me to less sorrow.
There we go. That's better. There was a real kind of low mid build up on the woes that I was not liking there. So this could be fun. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in a new track, and that's right, and I'm going to add in, mute it, and just add in, without our event horizon on the master bus. We don't really need that. That's just giving us a little bit of saturation and stuff. I'm going to insert and listen to the mix that I did with all the stock, all the plugins, not stock, all the nice third-party plugins. So where did I put this now? Come on, brain. I've put it in there? Yeah, that's right. So there we go. So this is the WAV file. It's probably going to be louder. Interesting. The mix that I did with the third-party stuff is actually brighter, so...
Give your heart to me with trust that it won't break. Anticipate apologies, being it's not guaranteed. Trying to make peace with my past, but it's my enemy. Refuse to speak with me, can't look in my eyes. When you see someone say that you don't recognize, has covered my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea. Here I am again, I always get it wrong. Sometimes I wonder how we ever made it this long.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, maybe I've got a little too much low end going on in this mix now, but yeah, they're not a million miles apart from the brightness on the mix that I did, which is really interesting.
Hey Chelsea.
Is that an effect of not mixing with a reference track? Possibly. It's an interesting comparison, but yeah, it's quite possible that it could just be a lack of reference. What settings would you use to render to MP3 for such a mix? Render MP3. I'd go to render, format MP3, high kilobit as possible. Done. Or even WAV. Just that's a relatively simple question. It's just same sample rate that you worked at, highest bit depth or bit rate that you can get away with. Go. Make sure it's your time selection. It should have been not clipping before you did any of that, which is where things like limiters come in. And yeah, I mean, the fact that my mix is a little...
Cover my face, I feel so out of place. But you're still by my side to catch me when I fall from grace. Hey Chelsea, I'm not always gonna be all that you expect from me. Whether I rise or fall, you'll be with me through it all. Hey Chelsea, hey Chelsea.
Yeah. I think I will get rid of that keyboard thing, because it's a nice thing to do, but it doesn't fit.
The more I promise you, the more I let you down.
But yeah, I mean, if I went and found the original mix and put a reference in there, I mean, the fact that one's brighter than the other, I'm using the same headphones on the same interface, it's entirely possible that I just was feeling a bit different on that different day last week. So what I would definitely do now is, export a version of this, and if I was trying to match the original mix, I would get a copy of the original mix and listen to it back to back, but you'd have to make sure that none of your plugins were on your master bus, and from there just listen back and then change your mix appropriately. That's one way of doing it. But yeah, from here I'm going to export this and probably make sure that this has got Dark Monday. I listened to the original track a couple more times and noticed how much darker it was than the tracks that I normally listen to. There's not a great deal of brightness in the official mix. Which is probably something to make way for the vocals and then the overheads and that kind of thing, which is probably why I've gravitated towards doing it here. But yeah, I mean, how you feel on different days can affect the way that you mix, which is why references are important. But yeah, I mean, giving yourself some distance and coming back and listening to it again is also another thing that I do tend to do. My method is, if I'm tracking with a band, I get the tracks clean, well recorded, all that kind of stuff, make sure the performance is right. Separately, I have a little mix assistant type session where I make sure everything's super clean and ready to mix. Then separately, I will make the mix come together and spend a good maybe 3 hours on it, export a version, go away, listen to it, maybe a couple of days later, then come back, and if there's anything that stands out at me as, oh, that needs changing, then I've got fresh ears to go change, quick listen, then we're probably much more likely to be done. The mix that I submitted here is actually slightly different from the one that I did on stream, because, like I said, I listened to it back later that day and went, oh, that needs changing, and changed several things. But then I listened to it again on a phone, on an iPad, in the car, and it sounded how I wanted it to sound, so I submitted it. I mean, I'm not going to win this competition, because even if I got like in the top 3, I would have to speak up and just say, like, look, I can't accept this, because I know the guys at Produce Like a Pro and Pro Mix Academy, so it would be a bit like kind of gaming the system. So yeah, couldn't really do that. But the fact that anyone would even say that it was considerable for a win would be a win in my eyes. So, you know, I think that's all for today. I am really quite surprised at how much brighter my mix was. But that's something that a lot of the Slate stuff ends up doing to you as well, because the saturation plugins that I use, and I use a lot of them, saturation inevitably adds higher harmonics, which can add high end, which is great, but quite often needs to be balanced. So it could well be that I just would have gone back to that mix and backed that off a little bit overall, but that's now conjecture because it's been submitted and it's done. And at that point, we are talking about personal taste and personal flavour. There are people who make really bright mixes who do very, very well. There are people who make really dark mixes who do very, very well. And different musicians go to different mix engineers for different reasons. So, yeah, that's one of those things. So, I'm now rambling. Guitars like in Stacey's mom. Oh, God, they were bright, yeah. But yeah, there you go. That's that classic pop punk sound from the early 2000s, and that's something I was brought up on, which is probably why in my first mix I gravitated that way of having quite bright guitars and quite punchy drums and that kind of thing, because in that genre, that's how my head hears everything. So, yeah, that's how I mix for different genres, is I put my head into a specific era of music and how that felt and go in that direction, which is a whole thing for another day. So yeah, I'm going to submit this just for fun, and thank you everybody for watching. This has been how you make a mix entirely in Reaper with nothing but inbuilt plugins. And so it looks like, yeah, I didn't even use the snare plate thing there or a second delay. And yes, there are amp options in Reaper. Whether you choose to use them or not is entirely up to you, but I still think that a real amp is far better, and there are loads of free impulse responses that you can get out there, so just get Googling and you can have those for free that will work on any platform as well. Hope this has been useful for you, and have a look at the Patreon if you would be so inclined. I'm actually going to end the stream properly this time rather than it cutting out. So I'm going to do my end screen thing. And I'm going to have to put them as part 1, part 2 and part 3 on the thing. What kind of effects do I have on the FX bus? Just to go back to that. The effects. So my small room is reverb with a Bricasti M7 impulse, which you can get for free from Samplicity. Bricasti M7 is one of the best reverb actual hardware units in the world, arguably. So that's Studio B close, which if I solo that. That's something that gives my mix some space. Then there's a vocal plate, which is same collection, but the vocal plate. And that's nice. And then the delay is a JS called Delay with Tempo, Ping Pong. And that's got an EQ on it afterwards. So that's nice. And that is that for my effects bus. Nice and simple. Short reverb, long reverb, delay. The OBS reverb plugin. Oh, Restream. Yes. Yeah, anytime. So, yeah, unfortunately it's the end of today's stream. So, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm not sure what the next stream's going to be. I'm going to get my pad and paper out, and work out what I'm going to do later this week. But for now, ciao.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.